Well, we don't agree with any of the drilling or interfering with Papatuanuku, Mother Earth. We think she should be left alone and left pristine. And if we interfere with her, we have a price to pay. And we are the benefactors, the mokopuna of Papatuanuku would be answerable to that. And so we have a guardianship role of making sure foreign investments like Petrograph and other companies do not come and despoil our land. Our principal argument is that it will interfere with the lie of the land, with the state of the land. It will also interfere with what is known, what we call here, the kapatakai, which is the food basket of the population. When petrographs or all those companies start mining in the sea, we are fearful that that activity would spoil our food store and interfere with the ecosystem of that food store. And consequently, we will suffer from it in days to come. We also have concerns about our fresh water here in Rangitukia and in Tairāwhiti. And we want to keep our fresh water pristine and clean and unpolluted. And we think that if you start interfering with all that, as the mining companies are planning to do, you'll interfere with that ecosystem, with the fresh water, and you introduce elements that are not supportive of the animal life in that water. For example, we of our own stream here, Waikaka, it's a kapatakai. We can go and catch eels there and get a meal from there every day if we need to. We don't have to go to the shop. I was thinking about it the other day. The Lord has provided us with a larder full of food, and it's our responsibility as residents of this area to take care of that food source. And the freshwater species in our streams are very much part of our food source and part of our ecosystem that we want to retain as clean as possible. And any drilling activity that's being planned will interfere with that ecosystem and will interfere with the future of this land and interfere with the food source of for the mokopuna in the future. And that's problematic for us. And so as elders in this community, we are always aware that we have a responsibility to retain those waterways in pristine condition so that the animal life or the food source from those fresh water sources is not interfered with and not despoiled and not ruined. And so it's always been our view that we need to keep the waterways and the land clear and clean and not interfere with the ecosystem that was provided for us. Before we arrived, before mankind arrived here, the ecosystem was such that there was enough within the environment to provide sustainable food source for our parents, for our great-grandparents, and all those generations that came before us. And we, in turn, have the responsibility of maintaining that for the next generation, for the future generations. We want to avoid having companies coming here to mine the sea, because they'll upset the ecosystem of that. And they'll upset what we refer to as our food source from the sea. And time will tell whether our stance is right. And I think it is. We believe it is. And that we need to carry out our responsibilities of maintaining the pristine nature of the sea, the waterways, and the forests, and the land. Otherwise, we'll become irresponsible. And our mokopuna, like you guys, will say, oh, those papas and nannies, they didn't care for the land, they didn't care for the sea, the waterways, and all that kind of stuff. And you'll be right if we didn't stand up and protest.
Do our bit.
And do our bit.
We do have a saying in Māori, ka kōrero te whenua, the whenua will talk. So I think it's how you look after that whenua or the land, and you look after it properly, you'll get good results. But you tamper with it, ka kōrero te whenua, the whenua will come back and give back to you what you give to it. So that's that kōrero has always been around for us to.
And the catastrophe, sad though it is, that's occurred in Christchurch is really the land telling us something. The land telling the government, the earthquake commissioner, whatever they are, whoever they are, plus the people who are living there, there's something wrong. There's something you've forgotten to do.
Or something that was done many years ago and the result is just coming now.
Just coming to fruition.
That's how we think. Something was done in Christchurch that should not have been done.
And the same would happen to Ngāti Pro.
And yeah.
We are quite certain that our stance to protect Papatuanuku, to protect the ocean, and to stop Petrobras and all the other companies from mining, our stance is right. I believe that Petrobras or any other companies may have access to the resources in Papatuanuku. There has to be a process through which they have to go. And like one of the processes is to ask people to talk with the iwi kāinga, because we are the guardians of that resource. And part of that asking is to actually do a karakia for Papatuanuku's gifts that are hidden in her womb, in her breast, in her puku, down in the sea. You don't just come in and rape it. And that's the problem, you see. And they've never asked for it properly, not even through the guardians or through Papatuanuku itself, to go through a ritual of karakia. I mean, the story of Rata cutting the tree, is very much part of the story of what the Petrograph is doing, Petrograph. And the government, John Key and what's his name, the big fat fellow?
Jerry Brownlee.
And Hekia Prata needs to go back and read the Rata story and trying to figure out the message that's in the Rata story for us as humans, for us as people, for us as guardians of that resource. And John Key needs to go back to that, him and Jerry Brownlee, and Hekia, and Peter Shambles. They get swept up by the grandeur of their position in Parliament. And it's all to do with money, and status that they've got is really only temporary. As politicians, it's only temporary. John Key won't be there forever, but the whenua is going to be here forever.
Right.
And the moana is going to be here forever, and Papatuanuku is going to be here forever. So, you know, their status as politicians, as leaders, is very much temporary. And whereas Papatuanuku will always be here. And if we don't care for her, then we are doing an injustice to our future generations, future population, whether Maori or Pākehā or politician or whatever. We need to behave differently now. We need to respect the environment and keep it in the pristine condition that it is. Fresh water, for example, is going to be the commodity of the future. It's going to be more important than gold and more important than diamonds, fresh water. And if we don't care for it, we will suffer from it, from not caring for it. Future generations will suffer, as many hot countries are now experiencing. Climate change is only the beginning of the problem that's going to come to mankind. Climate change. And we have to be mindful of the impact of climate change on the environment, on the resources that we have, and on us as a people, whether it's Māori or Pākehā or Inuits or whatever. We have to care for that environment. And the idea of saying thank you to the Creator for that resource is not a silly idea for all peoples around the world. It's a very precious idea that people should hold on to and behave accordingly, so that it becomes part of their psyche, not to just take because they want it, not to take because there's got to be money in it for them. The resources are not there for money. The resources are there for our life, for our lives, for the lives of our children and our great-grandchildren, and for generations to come. And we need to retain that resource there forever and not commercialize it the way we are intending to do. And so the argument that the politicians offer, that the economy needs to sell oil, no, the economy does not need to sell oil.